Yeah, 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 yeah,
Don't just make your fucking beats.
I'm about my game. Live by the rules, we don't play the same. That's on my grave, that's on my name. I'm saying, I'm about my paper, about my game. I'm about my game.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Thomas Christopher of the League Winners. I know it's Wednesday, not Tuesday, when we normally do this show. A lot of brain fog on there, so I take full accountability for that. Also, a short one because, hey, everyone expected Tuesday, but today is Wednesday. But I do have a guest who's in the green room right now with me, shaking his head. It is Vice President of the League Winners, Mr. Brandyn Pokrass. Brandyn, how you doing, my friend? Oh, you muted. Hold on, I got you. Wait, no, I can't. Oh, you muted yourself. There you go.
I did mute myself. It is indeed Wednesday. It is not Tuesday, but I'm still happy to be on the show with you. Of course. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, and I think there might be a little issue with X. Oh, it's because it's on the other X. Okay, so it's not streaming on X yet. Right now, it will be soon. Just bear with us.
I think you have to hit the go live button.
No, it's live, but there's something issue with the premium because I tried getting it for the other account. And for those listening right now, Twitter, X, whatever people call it nowadays, has never been our friend. But we did get the account back just in time for the Shrine Bowl, which was fantastic. And you know, we're back in business. I managed to get mine back. I think it was either the day before or the day of.
It was like 2 days. It was like the day before, 2 days before. Just a lot of good stuff happened that, very beneficial to the league winners and the overall stuff we do.
Yeah, shout out to my friend Emily, who works in advertising for Twitter/X for being the caveat helping us get that situated. So I do appreciate that. And because this is obviously going to be a shorter show, because we didn't have our normal alignment of guests because dad brain fog took over. I did want to talk to you about, just kind of recapping what was a great 2025-2026 season and go into the bowl games. So I guess I'll start from the beginning, but like this was, first year you made the full-time switch down into Florida. How was that experience like for you, covering not just one football team, but carousing 3 football teams and trying to put out the best coverage you can?
It's definitely an interesting task, and you can even extrapolate it over to the high school coverage, right? Where, I originate from the Northeast, and us in the Northeast, whether it be in Jersey, whether it be in Pennsylvania, whether you even drop that down to Delaware, move that up to Massachusetts, Rhode Island, like football is taken seriously. The difference is it is more from a professional lens. I grew up in Eagles country. The Eagles are like the lifeblood, the main team that everybody talks about when it's football season. Everyone's always looking forward to football season, right? College is usually the back burner to that. I'm referencing a point I'm about to make. There's a reason a fan base like Rutgers isn't as big as the Jets fan base or the Giants fan base. There's a reason why, the only real, I'd say, organization or school to really get that traction is like a Penn State and maybe to a smaller extent a Temple and some of these newer schools that are trying to gain that foothold.
Right.
You flip down to the South and they love their professional sports. Don't get me wrong. But there's such an emphasis on that college game. There's such an emphasis on, following those programs, wanting to see those programs succeed. It might not be the biggest of fan bases. It may not be the biggest, donor pools, but they care about those programs a lot. And I think being in this area for that first time, you can see that whether it's a big group or not, that care for the college side of things is there, and that care for the high school side of things is there too. High school football in Florida is a different world compared to the Northeast in some senses. there's obviously the tip of the top programs. There's so much good football in the Northeast. I will never disparage Northeast football. It's just different. The vibe around it a lot of times is just different. And it's been very cool getting that full year under my belt, seeing, all right, what are the real differences between being up north for something like this and being in the state of Florida for something like this? And I've enjoyed every second of it. I really have.
Yeah, it's Florida football is so bizarre because I would never in my life have expected that you could transfer out of a high school just to play a sport. That's never been like I mean I'm a kid who moved a lot, when I was in middle school and high school. So like I'm used to that, but just seeing kids have the freedom to do it without having to change residencies is pretty insane. And I gotta assume there's potentially financial incentive behind that. I don't want to get conspiratorial in that regard. But I mean, that just got to be a whirlwind as a reporter too. When you were working with the college like we do, and seeing kids in high school that you're about to start covering soon, and then they go to a completely different school in the middle of the year. I mean, how is that? What is that like? Like, I'm sure you've talked about that with other people down there.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one of the biggest things for me is, I like prepping for high school games specifically because,
Yeah.
and I like prepping for everything, but for a high school game specifically, if it's a team I don't really have familiarity with, or it's like the first game of a season, like last year, I like trying to find a roster and looking at, all right, who are the key players from this roster? I remember I went on Rivals a few times and tried looking at, some certain schools. I'm like, all right, this kid's getting looks from here. And this kid has, and obviously it's not an exact science. You're like, all right, this kid's getting looks from this place, that kid's getting looks from that place. You go to the field and half those kids aren't on the roster anymore. And you're like, huh, okay. I remember there was another scenario middle of the year. I forget which game I was covering. And all of a sudden, there's a kid with a plethora of offers on a new team that was on a different team a few weeks ago. And they're like, huh, I guess that's just the deal here. But there's always the middle ground to it, right? You don't want the excessive transferring, but you also want kids to put themselves into a good spot. I think a lot of the transfers, especially in Florida, come from the fact that kids want to make sure they're in the right spot to get exposure. There are some, like college sports, there are some premier Florida high school football programs. If you are attached to the name of a certain program, more colleges are going to get eyes on you. You're going to have more opportunities. And remember, everyone's fighting to get to that next level. And this next level now is made so much different with the transfer portal. Now you're getting guys from Division 3 and Division 2. And, we're finally seeing that culmination of something that we've talked about. Every level of football is being considered now. No, It's not just, only the guys at one level of football can win. Guys at FCS have kicked ass, whether it be in the college game, moving up, or in all-star games like the Senior and Shrine Bowl, Division 2, Division 3. I mean, look at Tyron Montgomery from John Carroll at the Senior Bowl. One of my favorite wideouts I had a chance to watch over this 2-week stretch, right?
Yeah.
That's a Division 3 player coming in, facing off against guys that played in the SEC and winning a lot of reps. So you take that into account, obviously you want quote unquote guardrails. There's a stop date for it, but kids got to put themselves in the best position. And we've both went through that. Every coach isn't going to do that. There are some premier programs that do just that. I'm not surprised by it. And it honestly makes covering the sport an adventure, but it also makes it more fun in a sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a whirlwind. That's the way, at least that's the way I always like to say it. It's probably very cliche, but I mean, with everything that's happening with football down there, and I wouldn't be shocked if we start seeing some more of that in other places too, if not already. So I do want to ask you this too, because it's kind of building off the same point of being down there. Because I got to cover multiple teams this year, but nowhere near to the extent you have. I mean, obviously, for those who don't know, I covered Syracuse. I did a good handful of Army, and then I did some random Delaware, Maryland, and UAlbany, which is an FCS program up here. But a couple of those schools are far enough away where I'm not able to go to these practices and stuff throughout the week. You, however, were able to do that because they were all, and you're in circumstances made it possible that you were able to do that this year. So I
Yes.
just wanted to, that's probably the best way to describe it, because nothing was really close either. You know, like there's places that were 2-3 hours away as well. So like, what was that like? How was the travel like for people who are listening? By the way, if you are listening, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. It's a live show. If you comment, we will get to them. If not now, if you comment after the show's over watching this, I'll get to it within 24 or 48 hours. But yeah, talk us through like what that travel was like and just juggling multiple teams while putting out content.
Well, I think the interesting thing is that, outside of FAU, it was my first year for 2 of the 3 programs I was covering. So you want to make sure you establish that foothold. You want to make sure you get that good foot in the door and make sure that you put the good work out. And I think the coolest thing about covering 3 different programs, obviously it's a grind, right? Obviously this is something where like, okay, now I'm having to push myself a bit more. I think the biggest thing is trying to find the things that intertwine, right? I had a chance to go start to finish for the most part with FIU, right? You want to see how things look in the spring compared to how they look in the fall, compared to how they look in week 1. Here's a perfect example of that. And you can verify this. I was high on the FIU secondary from day 1.
Yeah.
Right? Between Josiah McGrew, who was immediately standing out, to Shamir Sterling, to Brian Blades II, to Victor Evans III, and eventually Mr. Clark once the season got rolling. There were a lot of guys that really popped out, and being there and having that ability to see it from start to finish allows you to truly tell the story of what FIU season was. Right. And that's my favorite part of doing this. Inherently, I'm a storyteller. I love telling the story of a game, the story of a season, why things happen, how they happen, working to develop that deeper insight. You've really got to see a first-time FBS head coach from the start of the season implement that culture, right? And say he was going to implement that culture. You got to see how that looked through the spring. You then have that little break. Come back in the fall, you see some things different, but you also see some things tie in that carries you into the season. And then once you hit the season, now you're covering it like any other football team that, at least in my sense, I would have covered, right? Now it becomes, all right, now I'm covering this like I would, let's say, in my case, the Jets, when I was doing Jets coverage. Now you're armed with the knowledge that you already had. So now you're comparing it to what you've seen in the past. Like, all right, here's why this looks the way it did, because you have that reference, right? Here's why this may not be the way it is. And you start to build that narrative, build that story. Adding 2 other teams into that, I think the coolest thing for USF in terms of that coverage, and we're going school by school a little bit here. I think the coolest thing for that is obviously having someone like Mackenzie. Having Mackenzie there to balance my coverage with really it's cool. It's kind of like simulating like that like newsroom where you're sending like 2 and you're allowing those 2 different perspectives to shine. And she did a phenomenal job throughout the season. You're now working with a bigger pool of information because now you don't have 2 eyes seeing everything. You have 4 eyes seeing everything. And I think the biggest thing with USF was, there for game 1 right off the bat. You're going off quotes from a head coach, and in any sport, that's tough. But you see how things translated in week 1. And then you see how things translate in week 2. And now, just like FIU, but without maybe the same in-depth knowledge of seeing those practices the same way, now you're like, okay, here's how I can build this. And because of the profile they were developing and because of what was happening week after week, you now had a much deeper key on what that USF program was potentially going to be able to do. And you obviously ride the highs and lows with that. And when it comes to FAU, it's very similar to USF. We had covered a lot of FAU last season, right? But now with a whole different staff, mainly a whole different roster, you're now having to jump right in at week 1 and be like, okay, how's this going to look? In the case of Zach Kitley had never ran his own team yet. He'd only been in that coordinator role. How is he going to deal with the highs and lows? How is this offensive scheme going to deal with the highs and lows? The defense, right? I think so much of covering multiple teams is understanding the similarities, but also pinpointing the differences, pinpointing why something may not be working for one team, but may be working for another. And then if things flip, acknowledging, hey, here are the reasons why. And obviously, you want to build upon that in following years, right? If you have that baseline for year one, how do you build upon that? How do you make sure your coverage is even better? And that's something I'm working to do and striving to do in 2026.
Yeah. Also, I want to give a shout out to Mackenzie Neglia for her cover that you did. You did mention her. For anybody listening, you can follow her on X/Twitter at MacKenzieneglia. Mackenzie Neglia. She does our USF coverage along with Brandyn for the league winners. Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head with that, and I think it's fascinating too because you got to see multiple programs go through different stages of where they're at. Like you mentioned, Kitley never being there before, and like a whole new team after the stuff with he who shall not be named got fired. And then
Baltimore?
Yeah. There's a backstory behind that, but we'll leave that up to you guys to guess why for now. But yeah, Zach Kitley coming in and just seeing that team kind of struggle to. I mean, they performed better than last year's team, but they still struggled to get to where they wanted to be. You get to see the flip side of that with Willie Simmons, another guy coming from a lower program, and then he comes in and turns FIU into a bowl team in year one. And it completely turns around the program, and then you get to see USF where expectations are at an all-time high, and then you start to see rumors swirling of that coaching change and everything that surrounded that drama, and just seeing that kind of start to torpedo. It's been very fascinating. And I mean, I've even got some, I can speak kind of the same. I mean, seeing Delaware with Ryan Carty step up and made them bowl eligible in their first year in the FBS, and Fran Brown in Syracuse after they lost Steve Angeli, how that team had major expectations after winning 10 games last year, and they didn't win a single game after Steve Angeli went hurt, and seeing how that kind of spiraled out of control. So I think it's so fascinating, and this is the greatest part about it too, is like we can bounce ideas off of each other, right? Like we can just do more than just be like, well, just strictly reporting. I mean, you always have conversations about the stuff we're talking about because we are living it. And I think that's the unique experience too, and especially for somebody down there where you are, to see all three facets of where a franchise can be at in a point of time. I know we're talking franchise is the wrong word. Program can be at any one time. I think it's unique, and not a lot of people get to experience that. And you did a fantastic job on top of it.
Thank you.
So, but I do want to ask you, because obviously people are going to be listening. Like, what has been your favorite moment so far in 2025 covering those three teams? We'll talk about postseason stuff after.
I mean, my favorite moment in terms of a location I covered a game at obviously comes in the postseason, and you were there for that one. But I think the coolest game I covered, I mean, there were so many this year, and it's truly a blessing to be able to say that. I mean, one that immediately comes to mind is the Navy Temple game, one that really didn't even revolve around my beat, so to say. But the last minute Blake Horvath touchdown, the aggressiveness of Navy to go for two. I mean, Army, Navy immediately comes to mind too. But I think revolving around the teams that I covered, it really comes down to two. I think it's either USF winning on the last second field goal in the Swamp, which, boy, oh boy, if you don't think Stadium Pulse is real, they nailed that one in the game, because nothing like trying to write on a laptop while you have 90,000 people screaming in unison and the entire stadium is shaking and you're feeling it in the press box. Imagine what that's like on the field. But that was cool, seeing the back and forth battle and what ultimately ends up being one of the most important wins for USF in its program history, right? In terms of its profile, in terms of what they bounced back from over the past few years. I think the other one is FIU beating Jacksonville State to become bowl eligible. It's a fan base that's been through a lot as well, right? And finally getting over that hump, finally getting back to that postseason. It was really cool seeing not only the fan base, but also seeing the players truly understand and embrace what it meant to be the group to do that at that school. So I think when it really comes down to like the schools I personally covered, I think those are probably the two that come to mind.
Yeah, those are fantastic. By the way, I mean, there's been some crazy stuff this year. I mean, I got to witness the Syracuse UConn overtime thriller. I got to also witness Army getting upset by Tarleton State in the home opener in overtime. And then actually speaking of your teams, we got to see Navy pull the upset off over USF, which most people did not see that one coming, we'll say the least.
No, they did not.
So, and then obviously, Army Navy, that was just, I don't think, other stuff aside, like you can't, that third quarter singing of the entire stadium in unison will just always be in my head, as well as Eli Heidenreich's game-winning touchdown, because we were right there for that, right in the end zone. So that's always going to be a memory that just is just ingrained into my head. So that's been perfect. But I do want to move on to postseason stuff, I guess, because we did. I mean, for those who haven't listened or missed out, we attended a college football playoff game, Oregon against James Madison. That was fantastic. Probably one of the coolest experiences that me and Brandon have been at. Probably one of the best, like top 5, and the area is amazing. I mean, the food's incredible. Everything about that place was just incredible. But I mean, the All-Star games kicked off, and we went to the Hula Bowl. That was an interesting event. We'll just leave that one at that. That's another one you're going to have to read the tea leaves on if you want some more information. Then we had Mackenzie. Shout out Mackenzie again, just fantastic. She was at the American Bowl because of a schedule conflict, if only I could talk, because you ended up joining me at the Shrine Bowl, and then you ended up going to the Senior Bowl. So I do want to talk about all of the All-Star games and just the experiences. We'll ignore the first one we went to because we did a show there live. If you're watching,
all right, if you're gonna bring it up, I've never had a show experience quite like that one, and I'm going to leave the other thoughts I have of what that signified, but I've never seen people walk outside, see two people doing something, and proceed to simply not care at all in the slightest. Not to mention you dropped the mic from about 3 stories up, and it didn't break.
Yeah,
but
shout out to the left.
That was... Man, to say I was less than thrilled after that one would probably be a gigantic understatement.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a little shout out to the company that does these newer lab mics, indestructible apparently. But yeah, I couldn't believe. I mean, like, and people, for anybody listening, like the resort was basically rented out for the event that we were attending. So these people shouldn't have been there doing that specifically. But also there was a million other places for them to be at, and they just chose to go right into the background of us, incoherently drunk and talking on I think it was a FaceTime, I believe. So that was fun. But then we got to, we got to zoom past that unprofessionalism, and we went right to the Shrine Bowl, which, I mean, personally, shout out Eric Galco. Eric Galco's fantastic, and the Shriners Association that helps kids. They're fantastic as well. That was a great event. I just want to hear your thoughts about it. What were your takeaways of the event overall, or its players? And let's hear some Shrine Bowl stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Shrine Bowl to me is always an event that's worth going. Right. And you're always going to have the people, you're going to have people that are like, oh, why go to Shrine? Right.
Yeah.
I feel like the media access there is just amazing. I mean, they took it to another level this year. Yeah. Right. On top of the stuff that they had previously, which Go talk to anybody that's been at the event, right? They'll say the same thing to you. They'll say, hey, like this event was awesome. The way they handle everything's awesome. The roster's been getting better every year. They had legitimate, like the not exactly Surface Pros, but Surface Pro adjacent on the field. Probably the coolest thing I've ever experienced as someone covering an event, to the point where as plays were happening on the field during team drills, you not only would be able to watch them on the field, but you could go to the tablets and watch them back from 3 different views. It was just such a cool experience. And, like I alluded to, the talent there was really good as well. Like, I really enjoyed a lot of the players that I got to see. I think a good handful of them really worked to elevate their stock. I don't know if you want to dive into it, but
we'll
for
talk
example,
a little bit about it. Yeah.
Defensively, Mason Reiger and Wesley Williams immediately come to mind. 2 edge rushers, 2 defensive ends, however you want to categorize them. Williams, more of that, sawed off build that is just going to be a force in the run game. Showed off a really impressive pass rush arsenal too. The type of guy that understands what he's doing, has had pass rush production in the past in college, and showed that he can do it against guys that are pro bound. Reiger obviously has the injury history, but the tools were on display. And whether you want to look at practice or you want to look at the game, I mean, he won the defensive MVP, racking up 3 sacks and basically sealed the win and ensured that the opposing offense just really couldn't do much in the game. Like, those 2 guys pop off the page. And then Eli Heidenreich, first time playing a legitimate running back position.
Yeah.
Some of the most fluid movement of any skill position player, I'd say, at the entire event. I'd put some of his tape up against guys at the Senior Bowl too.
Yeah.
That's how good the routes were, and that's how good the body control was. And he got better every single day. And we could rattle down the list, right? Just a very good event and an event I'm always appreciative to cover that is simply getting better every single year.
Yeah, that was just, the media access, first off, I completely agree. That's just one of the, as far as bowl games go, other than the first one where it was kind of a lawless wonderland. And if we didn't do the things we did there, I don't think we would have had that type of access. Shrine Bowl far and away is the best bowl game in that aspect, in my opinion as well. It's just, you don't get that type of one-on-one with players, and even though there is limitations in some sense, certain days you basically got 15-minute rain on them. So that was very fantastic. We got to meet a lot of awesome personalities as well. Mark Gronowski of Iowa, he was a fantastic guy. I mean, they were really, truly all fantastic. Haynes King, seeing him kind of open up. I didn't expect Haynes King from Georgia Tech to be a quiet kid, to be completely honest with you, but then he started opening up as we just continue the conversation, and just being able to build those conversations and relationships with players on that level, I think is great. Shout out to Landon Robinson as well and his family for supporting us. Landon's fantastic, and he was another guy that really stood out and probably made himself a good amount of money. And him and Eli, 2 guys from our program where no transfers in, it's all recruit.
Very rare. It's very rare for the transfer portal to affect that program in the slightest. There's some guys, but from a macro sense, it's not something that really affects those programs.
Yeah, because they won't. I mean, if you choose to go to Navy, you choose to have assignment down the road. And not a lot of people want to do that, which is understandable. So seeing guys like Eli, who another guy who didn't think he would be as quiet as he was, and he opened up as the conversation grew, and that was fantastic as well. But guys like Eli and Landon really showing out against P4 and higher and high level players, the best of their positions, just was fantastic to see as well. It's so fascinating because you kind of hit the point of that, like the nail on the head, when people were just like, why the Shrine Bowl? And I think you have to experience it to know why, shout out once again. I do want to give a big shout out to Eric Galco, who is the person who runs the event. Fantastic guy, and just such a well-run event. Truly phenomenal. And shout out to his scouting department as well. Shout out to David, one of the national scouts there I met. Also, I want to give a shout out to Daniel Zuniga, who is a friend of the show and has come on here. You can find him I think it's at Couch P Sports on X/Twitter and Couch Potato Sports on Instagram. That guy's fantastic. He's also insane. He's also completely insane. Why don't you let everybody know what Daniel was doing while we were in the frigid tundra of Texas?
Walking. He was doing a lot of walking.
For people who don't understand, it was an unwalkable wasteland. Like, it was literally, you were walking on top of ice, and he was walking a mile plus. He said 20-30 minute walk to his hotel. That's insane. Absolutely insane.
I love it though. And I will say this year, I personally enjoyed my time in Mobile as well, shifting over to that one.
Yeah.
A lot of standouts from that game too. Kind of continuing a trend from Shrine, a lot of really good trench players, a lot of guys that I think can contribute at the tight end position. The running back position surprised me. Jaden Ott, to the chagrin of the Oklahoma fan base, as I found out, had a good week. I've never seen a fan base crash out over a player like that. And I'll leave it at that because I was in shock seeing those notifications flow in. Mike Washington Jr. as well. Quarterback surprise too. Garrett Nussmeier picked it up toward the end of the week. Luke Altmaier, very consistent, very good floor over the course of the week. He was my personal favorite in terms of how consistent he was and what he was able to do. I know a lot of people are going to throw out Nussmeier there, but yeah, I could rattle off a bunch more names. A few more I want to highlight. Caleb Banks from Florida, up and down day one, killed it the rest of the week. Grayson Halden from Oklahoma, and there's probably a few more I want to touch on. TJ Parker from Clemson,
love TJ Parker.
Lee Hunter from Texas A&M, and Kyle Lewis from Pitt. Kyle Lewis might be, if not one of my favorites, my favorite player in this draft class. I don't really care about the size limitations. I'm going to put him on my defense and let him go make plays because that is all he did in Mobile all week. But,
yeah,
Mobile is always an interesting time. It's an interesting time when it's freezing and the temperatures are frigid outside. Obviously not the easiest place to get to logistically for a lot of people, but I was so happy I got to connect with so many people down there. The football product was good for majority of the time down there. And you know what? It's a key part of the draft process. And I was happy to be a part of that this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for people who aren't aware, a lot of people, because of the wind and cold front that ended up hitting and snow and ice, a lot of people's flights ended up getting canceled trying to get to Mobile, or at least pushed back and delayed. I know that the Chat Us Up guys, they ended up getting their flight delayed or canceled for one day. I believe Daniel ended up, the aforementioned Daniel from Couch Potato Sports, he also had to delay his flight. And they were trying to recommend it to us too, but we said F that noise, and we just went. we just got to get into where we needed to go. But that's kind of been like the mantra of what the season's been like for us. I mean, when we've had to go places, we have gone places, and nothing has really stopped us. So I just wanted to ask you, between the bowl games, if you could have one. Also, before we get to that point, actually, I do want to shout out Chris Hilton from LSU, who's the only player to ever play in all 4 bowl games, which is just fantastic. I mean, for a guy that's had less than 250 receiving yards in 2025, to be able to get an invite to not just one bowl game, but all 4 bowl games is absolutely absurd, and he deserves all the praise in the world for his work ethic in doing so. Also, shout out to Devon Marshall, and Michael Heldman too, who played from the Hula Bowl. There's another person I'm missing, kid from Wyoming, I believe it is.
Caden Barnett.
Caden, yes. For making their trip from the Hula Bowl to the Shrine Bowl as well. And Devon Marshall had a fantastic
He
Shrine
did
Bowl.
indeed. One of the best players in Frisco, period.
Yeah, and Michael Heldman ended up to he came in late, and then the next day he was just all foot on the gas. So shout out to those guys. Barnett actually also played well as well against some really good defensive competition. I'll just say that the trench work there was fantastic. But I wanted to ask you if you had to pick, I don't know, maybe not one player, but 3 players who stood out to you throughout the entirety of the process. Who would they be and why?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that because I do have something cooking that kind of ties into that question.
Yeah.
It's going to come after 2 other articles, but to give a little bit of a spoiler, I'm doing Shrine Bowl standouts, Senior Bowl standouts. Both of those should be done. And I'm doing an all Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl type team. What is that going to be in its final form? I'm still trying to figure that out, but it's coming together and I'm excited to put that out. Ooh, 3 overall players that are you asking me like my 3 favorite overall players from this?
Yeah, they don't have to
so far.
Yeah, they don't even have to
Okay.
be like they can't just they don't even have to be like a fantastic standout. Just players you enjoyed seeing and how they performed.
I think number 1 for me is Kyle Lewis from Pitt. I have not seen a linebacker play like that at an all-star game over the 2 years we've been doing this.
Yeah.
Just multiple interceptions, multiple pass breakups, flying to make plays in the run game. Like I said, he's one of my guys. Like I would be pounding the table for him if I was in a draft room. I understand he has size limitations. I think if you have a creative enough defensive mind, he's probably someone that I would be like willing to add immediately. And even without that, I think he's a good enough player that he can adapt to really whatever situation he's put into. Offensively, I think for a point that you made, Chris Hilton Jr., it's not just that he was the Iron Man, it's that he performed in every single spot he was at. You want to mention Hula, he performed there. American, he performed there. Shrine Bowl, I mean, the route running and the speed was there all week. And then he shows up in Mobile and is producing right away, had one of the better reps right when he got to practice. This is a guy that obviously has not been as healthy as he wanted, hasn't had the production that he's wanted, but he led all players at the Shrine Bowl in speed. I think he hit 22 miles an hour. He was on the leaderboards at senior. This is a guy with athletic tools. And is he a wide receiver 1, so to say? Is he even a 2 or a 3? Maybe not. But this is a guy that's going to make an impact at the NFL level one way or another. And I think this week was a huge step toward him doing that. And I think number 3 for me, if I'm not going to go with Wesley Williams, I'm probably going to go with Mason Reiger. I think that it might have been one of the more dominant trench performances over the course of a week that I've seen. And as the days went on, I think he got even better. Just the way he was throwing out the pass rush moves, the way he was attacking the run game, just so insanely impressive. And the fact that it all translated to the game, to the live action, I think that's the most impressive thing for me. Because obviously in these all-star events, guys aren't going to play in the game. Guys maybe don't want to finish out the whole week, right? Everyone has their reasons. And especially considering the weather that was going on, I do not blame a soul for leaving early or not participating because there was no guarantee you were getting out of there. For Reiger to carry his performance from practice into the game like that was probably the most impressive thing for me because it shows that this is going to translate full time. This is going to translate to full speed. And that was really cool. Some honorable mentions or other guys that I would add to that list. I mentioned a Caleb Banks. I mentioned a TJ Parker. I think a Michael Heldman is a great name. I think Jaden Ott. I think a Malachi Fields, a Lewis Bond. Like I could throw out 30 different names to you. But I think if I were going to narrow it down to those, 3, it would probably be those 3. And then probably my number 4 would be Jaden Ott just because of everything that's transpired over the past 2 years for him to have that type of performance in Mobile shows that, hey, the player that everybody thought he was going to be is still in there somewhere. And I think that's really good for him heading into a draft process where, hey, let's face it, he's going to have a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah, that's an understatement when it comes to him, because he had a fantastic. I mean, even when he was playing hurt at Cal, he was still performing well. And then, for whatever reason, it just didn't happen at Oklahoma, and I don't think we'll ever get a real reason why. There's been some rumors on both sides that blame each other. So who knows what the truth? The truth lies somewhere in the middle on that. I think that's a great list. Mason Reiger was also a fantastic interview. He's a fantastic guy too. Very good-hearted guy. I think mine. I would have to go. I would have to go Landon Robinson, and this is going to sound biased because I just love the guy anyway. But there's a reason I love him. There's a reason
he had
love
a
him.
phenomenal week.
Like he was splitting double teams
yeah.
like nothing. And this guy is 5'11", like, he's just splitting double teams like nothing. He's an animal. He was also fantastic. He was just overall really fantastic. I also think Mason Reiger's a great one too. Man, I'm gonna blank on the kid's name. Oh my gosh, the kid from ECU. Is it Anthony Smith? Yeah, Anthony Smith was very fantastic too. For anybody listening out, I'm horrible at names. That's why I have Brandyn here to make sure to remind me of the names of the people. I just know numbers. He was 24 in the practice. I know that much. I remember that. So
that's good.
Yeah, I'm a numbers man. I'm not a names man at all. Numbers and faces. But Anthony Smith, he was fantastic. He was just getting open at will, like consistently against some good P4 defensive backs. And also, I want to give an honorary shout out to Marvin Lewis Jr. And John and Marvin Lewis Jr. and Brian Smith Jr. Both Brian Thomas? Brian Thomas Jr. See, I'm bad with names. This is just proof I'm horrible with names. Two sons of some Jets legends. And Brian Thomas, he looked. I said it right this time. Brian Thomas Jr. He looked really good, especially in ones. I'm so bad with names, dude. It's a little embarrassing.
It's why we work well, because I'm not great with faces right off the bat, but I can remember names like the back of my hand, and evidently that's why this thing works. Thomas, definitely no other reason.
Yeah. I'm much more a face guy and not a name guy, as this 2-minute segment has shown. Well, actually, if you listen to any of the shows, I mean, I always say that. But they were fantastic. 2 Jets legacy players. Marvin Jones Jr. specifically. He underperformed as well at Oklahoma, and he was a guy that had all the tools and just wasn't able to figure it out there. But we got to see that on display during practices. So it was great seeing him perform. It was great seeing Brian Thomas Jr. perform as well. Brian Thomas's dad used to be one of my favorite Jets players because he had an insane face mask, gnarly face mask, one of my favorites of all time. Shout out to him. And then I was really surprised with Mark Gronowski of Iowa. I thought he looked really going into that. I didn't think he was going to be one of the better quarterbacks. Nothing against him at all, but in terms of passing statistics throughout the year, he was on the lower side of things, and he was really consistent throughout the portions of the Shrine Bowl practices, where other guys that we expected to be as consistent, Joe Fagnano, cough, was not. And Joe, I mean, I don't know. Listen, I'm not going to speculate much about Joe, but he should fire his agent, because he was supposed to be at 3 All-Star games, and he was supposed to be at the bowl game. He didn't go to any of those and just went to the Shrine Bowl, and he looked rusty. Like, he looked like a guy who needed to get some reps in before he did that. So I think, what do I know? But I think it was great.
And to add on that, right, if it weren't for Cade Klubnik, and I think you can even make the argument even with Cade Klubnik there, Gronowski was arguably the best quarterback at the Shrine Bowl. And look, obviously, got to present the caveat. This isn't the strongest quarterback class, obviously. But if you're looking for a guy that can bring a floor and potentially be a long-term backup and maybe a spot starter for you right off the bat, in some cases, I think Gronowski showed that. He looked so comfortable with the pro-style schemes. He looked so comfortable under center. The footwork, the throws on the move. I mean, he's throwing blocks for touchdown runs in the game. And he talked to us in that interview about, and I'm going to mention in the article I'm doing, he mentioned how the schemes that they ran at Iowa were very similar to the Packers schemes, which tied into the scheme they were running at the Shrine Bowl under Sean Mannion, who now is the Eagles offensive coordinator. And that's a whole different thing because of everything that's going on with the Eagles, reportedly. But it was really cool seeing how Gronowski operated. He felt like one of the only quarterbacks that was willing to thread over in the middle of the field or attempt those throws over the middle of the field consistently. I mean, it was 7-on-7, but his throw to J. Michael Sturdivant over multiple defenders, layered, was one of the best of the entire week. The way he was attacking the seam shots. If it weren't for Eric Gentry being 6'6" at linebacker in the middle of the defense, he probably would have had a few more. So I completely agree with you there. He was one of my quarterback standouts of not just the Shrine Bowl, but of the entire All-Star Game week. He's someone you're going to have to keep an eye on heading into the Combine. And tying into the Combine, if you are looking for someone to jump out of the gym and test out of the gym, circle Landon Robinson. He's going to blow it up.
Yeah, I hope they give him the invite. I don't know if that's been official yet, but I do. I mean, there's no way you can't have a guy who can bench over 450 and squat 650. Just not at the combine. I would love to see how many reps that dude gets in because he's very. I don't want to say he's Aaron Donald yet, but there's traits to him that could make him be that, especially his work ethic. That guy works harder than a lot of players I've seen, and being able to talk to him. Also, very fantastic kid. He was very kind and just an overall great kid. So I do appreciate that. Brandon, before we get ready to wrap this one up, because like I said, this was supposed to be a Tuesday show. I had dad brain fog and just completely whiffed. So that's a my B. That's a my B. So there's only me and Brandon running this ship right now. And thankfully we haven't ran it into the ground, but I guess that's why we do what we do here, right? But before we get to that point, I mean, overall, I'm gonna ask you throughout everything that we've done this year, what's the number one thing in your memory? Like, what's the top spot?
I have one, but I'm also going to give a cop-out answer to close out the show. It's the Oregon game. Like, legitimately, I don't know how else to say it, but to feel the culmination of everything, really, for that season end there. Obviously, when it comes to the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl, I'm so grateful to have those opportunities, right? And to be credentialed for that, it's not a guarantee. Right. It's not a guarantee to be credentialed. I'm truly thankful to have those opportunities. And, those things are what you make of it, right? You could go to the Shrine Bowl and just sit on your hands and do nothing. But, between you and I and other people at this company, we're go-getters. And we make things happen. That's been really cool. That Oregon game truly felt like the culmination of, at least for 2025, everything that had gone on. All the hard work put in the preseason, covering those three teams, doing my best with everything. It felt like, wow, it's kind of one of those reminders in a sense where you can reach that pinnacle. And I think I remember, I still have like the picture in my mind, and obviously the picture on social media, standing at midfield of that Oregon field, that stadium that was just rocking a few hours ago, and be like, damn, this is really cool. It's really cool to have an opportunity to do this. And I think the cop-out answer for me is everything, right?
Yeah.
You look at this day and age where, you have the horrific cuts at the Washington Post, where you have a guy that could pay all the salaries at that company tenfold, decide to fold one of the most historic journalistic operations, not just in sports, but in so many different areas because of greed and honestly probably a desire to burn a institution to the ground, right? We're in a day and age where so many people refuse to understand the value of journalism in a time where journalism is needed more than ever, right? So you take a look at where everything is right now. And truly, I'm just grateful that I have an opportunity to do this. I have an opportunity to tell stories about schools that may not have the coverage that, your big schools get. I have an opportunity to talk to players that, I get to tell their stories in a sense. And I get to share, maybe some tidbits people don't know and allow them to get their name out there to help improve their careers, right? To be a way for players to get those names and those stories to a wider audience, however wide this audience may be. It's growing every day. To have a chance to travel, something that I did not exactly have the privilege to do before I started this, right? There's so many things I could run down the list of being grateful for. But in this day and age, I'm just truly grateful that I have an opportunity to do this right now. Because look at the world around you. Nothing is guaranteed. I'm just insanely grateful to have this opportunity right now. And I hope people understand that, it's not a guarantee. And doing this is truly something special. And I hope that people that aren't in this industry understand how important and special sports journalists are, because without sports journalists, without the amazing stories you're getting from people like Pablo Torre and the people that at the Washington Post, things wouldn't be on a path that they're supposed to be. The goodness of this world wouldn't be as known. And if we here at the League Winners can provide even just a little bit of that, I feel like I can sleep better at night. So kind of a bit of a diatribe there, but truly grateful for what we've been able to do and what I truly think we're building towards as we head into the rest of 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, I think that was really well said. And, to build off that, I think that part of that is the reason why the ACC kickoff and the American kickoff were probably my favorite points of the year, because it was like the start of what we've been working so hard. What we worked so hard to try to obtain last year. We finally started the little pieces of that. Like we finally got invited to these things that we've been busting our butt to get into. And then when we got into that, we were able to be one of the few journalists privileged enough to ask questions. And we were given the opportunity to ask those questions because people put their faith in us to do our jobs and do them correctly, especially the American Bowl. Rest in peace, Chuck Sullivan, who gave us the opportunity we basically ran. I mean, he told us straight up, without us, that event would have been ruined. And that's because we were in there for every single team, not even the teams we covered. Because at that point, for anybody listening, we only covered Florida Atlantic and USF full time. Navy wasn't even a plan at the moment. The Army wasn't really a plan at the moment either. And we did every single team in that conference. And we were the primary question askers for every single team, except for maybe one, which I think might have been Charlotte or ECU, because they had a contingent of fans there, obviously, because it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. But besides like those two teams, I mean, what was that, 10 teams? So that's pretty good. And that just kind of built the momentum through the year. And the Oregon was great. I still have the visual memory of us when we did the pre-games, where we're at that kind of like Eagles Nest on the other side, where they held the interviews for James Madison. And that was fantastic. And then I remember after the fact, walking the field at night. And then it was just a fantastic, it's been a fantastic year. And we're basically officially on the close and a start of a lot of new things. Appreciate what you said about the Washington Post as well. Especially I personally can't believe they got rid of the other investigative journalist side of that, which I think is insane. Sports is one thing, but losing that stuff is so much more important. People can't even understand, but I'm happy that we're able to bring outlets for people who do want to listen to sports and do it the right way, because we do it the right way. I guess it's my little diatribe, but I'm very thankful we were put in the position we're able to do, and this is just moving on for bigger and better things. So everybody listening right now, just be prepared, because 2026 is here, and so are we. But before we get out of here, Brandon, let everybody know where they can find you at on your social media.
You can find me, as I finally decided to put it, at Deepak24 on Twitter, on Instagram, at Blue Sky. You can find me at Brandyn-Pokrass. Before we get out of here, just do your best every day. Continue to try to do your best every day and look out for each other. World's tough, but we're all better when we all work together and find ways to be together as a community.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is Thomas Christopher. Find me at Tommy CFB, and you can find our actual League Winners page again on Twitter at League Winners FB. We're finally back. We're grooving. Or you can find us on Instagram at the league winners. It is spelt how it is sound. For Brandon and Thomas, we are signing off.